Captain Han Minho stood at the wide window of Nexus Prime, watching ships come and go in the darkness of space. The massive space station sat at the edge of known space, where all the important people of the galaxy met to make big decisions. Today's decision would decide if an entire race lived or died. Minho had seen many things in his 20 years with the Earth Defense Corps, but nothing like this. The Galactic Coalition had existed for thousands of years, keeping peace between hundreds of different alien races. Every species had a voice. Every species had rights. Or so they said. The meeting hall buzzed with sounds from dozens of different aliens. Some spoke in clicks and whistles. Others used flashing lights or changing colors on their skin. Minho's translator earpiece worked hard to turn it all into words he could understand. Most of what he heard made him sick. "The Vialthani offer no strategic value," said Ambassador Krex of the Thorian Empire. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their military is non-existent. Why should we waste resources on them?" Near the center of the Great Hall, a being made of what looked like living crystal stood perfectly still. This was Resonance of Morning Light, the Vialthani ambassador. Light moved through her transparent body in slow waves. When she spoke, it sounded like wind chimes mixed with singing. "Honored members of the Coalition," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My people do not ask for wealth or weapons. We ask only for medicine, for hope. The plague spreads through our worlds like fire. Our children die before they can sing their first songs." Minho watched the other ambassadors. Some looked away, others checked their data tablets. A few whispered to their assistants. Nobody seemed to care that an entire species faced extinction. The Vialthani lived on crystal worlds in a quiet part of the galaxy. They spent their time making beautiful music and growing crystal cities that sparkled like jewels. They had never hurt anyone. They had never threatened anyone. They simply existed, creating beauty in a universe that seemed to have little time for such things. "The numbers are clear," announced Senator Vash of the Centauri Republic. Her blue skin rippled as she spoke. "The Vialthani homeworld sits far from major trade routes. They produce no rare minerals. Their artistic endeavors, while pleasant, offer no economic benefit to Coalition members. In times of limited resources, we must prioritize." Dr. Kim Nari, Earth's top scientist studying alien life, sat in the human section. She had spent weeks studying reports about the plague affecting the Vialthani. Something about it bothered her, but she needed more information to be sure. "The plague appears to be a natural mutation," reported Dr. Zelthon, the Coalition's chief medical officer. His tentacles waved as he spoke. "These things happen. Evolution is not always kind. Sometimes entire species simply reach the end of their time." Minho noticed how quickly Dr. Zelthon had dismissed the Vialthani. The Coalition had the best doctors and scientists in the galaxy. They could cure diseases that would kill millions. They had saved dozens of species from natural disasters. But somehow, they had barely looked at the Vialthani plague. Commander Park Jiwoo, Minho's superior officer, leaned over to whisper, "This is wrong. We both know it." Minho nodded. The humans had joined the Coalition only 50 years ago. They were still the new kids, still trying to prove themselves. But watching this meeting made him wonder what exactly they were trying to prove. The vote came after 6 hours of debate. One by one, species after species voted against helping the Vialthani. The reasons were always the same: limited resources, other priorities, strategic considerations, economic realities. The Althari Confederation votes no. The hegemony abstains. The Korthian Republic votes no. When Earth's turn came, Ambassador Lee Jinwoo stood slowly. The Terran Federation votes yes. "We believe all sapient life has value, regardless of economic benefit." A few delegates laughed. Others shook their heads. The humans were being naive again, sentimental. They would learn. The final count was devastating. Of the 47 Coalition members, only 3 voted to help the Vialthani: Earth, the small Rigel Alliance, and the peaceful Tau Ceti worlds. Everyone else had decided that letting an entire species die was simply good business. Resonance of Morning Light stood perfectly still as the results were announced. Then Minho saw something that made his blood run cold. Tiny cracks appeared. In her crystal body, starting at her feet and spreading upward like lightning, the plague had found her too. As the other ambassadors filed out, discussing dinner plans and trade negotiations, Resonance of Morning Light collapsed to her knees. Her beautiful voice became a harsh whisper of breaking crystal. Minho was the first to reach her. Dr. Kim Nari was right behind him, medical scanner already in her hands. "Please," Resonance of Morning Light whispered, "do not let our songs be forgotten. Do not let the little ones die in silence." Dr. Nari's scanner beeped rapidly as it analyzed the alien's condition. Her face went pale as she read the results. "Captain," she said quietly, "this isn't a natural plague. Look at these readings. The genetic markers are too specific, too targeted. This was made in a laboratory." Minho felt his stomach drop. "You're saying someone created this disease?" "I'm saying someone designed it specifically to kill Velthani. This is biological warfare." Around them, the Great Hall emptied as delegates returned to their comfortable ships and stations. They had done their duty. They had voted according to their interests. If an entire species happened to die from what they thought was bad luck, well, that was unfortunate, but not their problem. Minho helped Dr. Nari get Resonance of Morning Light to the medical bay. The Velthani ambassador was unconscious now. Her crystal body shot through with dark veins where the plague ate away at her from inside. "How long does she have?" Minho asked. "At this rate? Maybe a week, maybe less." Dr. Nari's hands shook as she worked. "Captain, if this plague is artificial, then someone in the coalition knows about it. Someone might even be behind it." 3 hours later, Minho stood in the communications center, waiting for his call to Earth to go through. The message would take days to reach home, but he needed to report what they had learned. When the connection opened, Admiral Lee Sora appeared on the screen. Her tired face looked even more worn than usual. "Captain Minho, I've been expecting your report." "Admiral, we have a situation. The Velthani plague isn't natural. Someone made it as a weapon. The coalition voted to let an entire species die from what amounts to genocide." Admiral Lee was quiet for a long moment. In the background, Minho could see the lights of Earth's orbital shipyards through her office window. "Captain, I want you to understand something. Earth is still new to galactic politics. We have 3 colony worlds and a small defense fleet. The coalition has thousands of species and weapons that could turn our sun into a black hole. Yes, ma'am. But sometimes being small means you can do things that big powers cannot. Sometimes being new means you remember things that old civilizations have forgotten." Minho waited. "Captain Minho, you have new orders. Prepare a full medical and military analysis of the Velthani situation. Dr. Nari is authorized to use any resources necessary to study this plague. Commander Park will begin discreet preparations for fleet movement." "Admiral, are we really going to help them?" "Captain, 50 years ago, humanity looked up at the stars and dreamed of finding friends among them. We dreamed of joining a galactic community where intelligence and cooperation mattered more than brute force or economic advantage." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "We were wrong about what we would find out here, but that doesn't mean we have to be wrong about who we choose to be." The transmission ended, leaving Minho alone with his thoughts. Outside the station's windows, the galaxy continued its ancient dance. Stars burned and died. Civilizations rose and fell. And somewhere in the darkness, an entire species waited to learn if anyone in the universe still cared about right and wrong. In the medical bay, Dr. Nari worked through the night, analyzing samples from Resonance of Morning Light. What she found would change everything. The plague wasn't just designed to kill Velthani. It was a test run. The genetic signatures showed traces of other species' DNA. Someone was preparing weapons that could target any race in the galaxy. They embraced. Coalition thought they were abandoning one worthless species. They had no idea they were enabling the development of weapons that could destroy them all. Dawn came to Nexus Prime, as it always did, with the light of a distant star filtering through the station's massive windows. But for the first time in galactic history, a species was about to learn that being forgotten by the powerful didn't mean being abandoned by everyone. The message went out on all human frequencies, broadcast from every Earth ship and station. The Terran Federation formally declares its intention to provide full military and medical support to the Velthani people. Any force that threatens their survival will be met with human opposition. The galaxy's response was swift and unified. Bewilderment, then laughter, then growing anger as they realized the humans were completely serious. War was coming. 3 months had passed since Earth's declaration, and the galaxy was not laughing anymore. Colonel Cho Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance, watching the Vailthani homeworld of Kalen grow larger on the main screen. The planet looked like a massive jewel floating in space, its crystal cities catching and reflecting light from the system's twin suns. But even from orbit, he could see the dark patches where plague had killed entire settlements. "Colonel, we're receiving. Transmission from the surface," reported Communications Officer Ryu Seo-hyun. It's not good, sir." The main screen switched to show a Vailthani city. What should have been a beautiful place of singing crystal spires was now a cemetery. Dead Vailthani lay in the streets, their once clear bodies turned black and cracked. The few survivors moved slowly between the bodies, singing low, sad songs for their dead. "How many cities are affected?" Cho asked. 47 out of 63 major population centers, came the reply. "The plague is spreading faster than our models predicted." Cho closed his eyes for a moment. When Earth's fleet had left home, they knew they were racing against time. But seeing the reality made his chest tight with anger and sadness. The human fleet was small by galactic standards. 12 ships, including 3 medical vessels packed with doctors and equipment. Admiral Lee Sora had wanted to send more, but Earth needed to keep some ships home. The Coalition had made it clear that helping the Vailthani would have consequences. Those consequences had started almost immediately. Back on Earth, General Song Tae-wan was dealing with problems that got worse every day. Coalition trade ships no longer stopped at human stations. Earth's 3 colony worlds reported being harassed by Coalition patrol vessels. Diplomatic meetings were canceled. Economic sanctions were being discussed. "Sir," Major Lim Jae-hyuk approached Cho with a data tablet. "Dr. Kim Nari wants to see you. She says it's urgent." Cho found Dr. Nari in the ship's main laboratory, surrounded by equipment and data screens. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, which was probably true. "Colonel, I found something," she said without looking up from her microscope. "The plague isn't just random. It's incredibly sophisticated." "What do you mean?" Dr. Nari pulled up images on the main screen. They showed Vailthani cells being attacked by something that looked like tiny machines. This plague was designed by experts. People who understand Vailthani biology better than the Vailthani understand it themselves. But here's the strange part. The technology signatures match Coalition databases. Cho felt cold. "You're saying Coalition scientists made this weapon?" "I'm saying whoever made it had access to Coalition research that should be classified at the highest levels." Before Cho could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Captain Oh Sung-min's voice came over the intercom. "All hands to battle stations. We have multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. Coalition vessels are approaching Kalen." Cho ran to the bridge, Dr. Nari right behind him. The tactical display showed 12 ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. But these weren't Coalition enforcement vessels. They were sleek, black ships with weapon signatures Cho had never seen before. Unknown vessels. "This is Colonel Cho Hyun-woo of the Terran Defense Force. You are entering a humanitarian zone. State your intentions." The response came in a voice like grinding metal. "Human vessels, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. The Vailthani system is now under hegemony jurisdiction. You have 1 hour to leave or be destroyed." Cho had heard of the hegemony. But Earth had never dealt with them directly. They were a group of species that believed in survival of the strongest. If you couldn't defend yourself, you didn't deserve to exist. "Dr. Nari," Cho said quietly, "your research into the plague. Could the hegemony have made it? It's possible. They have the technology and definitely the attitude. On Kalen's surface, the situation was even worse than the orbital view suggested. Major Lim Jae-hyuk led a team of human medics through the Crystal City of Harmony Falls, trying to establish a treatment center. The Vailthani, who could still move, helped as much as they could, but many were too weak to stand. The Vailthani sang constantly, even while dying. Lim had learned that it was their way of dealing with pain and fear. The songs were beautiful but heartbreaking. They told stories of crystal gardens that would never bloom again, of children who would never learn to fly between the tall spires, of love songs that would die with their singers. "Major," Corporal Juan Dejo called out, "you need to see this." Juan was kneeling next to a young Vilthani whose body was barely holding together. But instead of the usual black cracks of the plague, this one showed something different. Golden light moved through the cracks, and new crystal was slowly growing to fill the gaps. "She's healing," Juan said in amazement. "Her body is fighting. Off the plague," Dr. Nari's voice crackled through their communicators. "Major Lim, I need samples from any Vilthani showing unusual resistance to the plague. I think I've found something important." Back in orbit, the tension was building. The hegemony ships had moved closer to Kalen, and their leader was getting impatient. "Human fools," the grinding voice said over open channels. "You cannot save them. The Vilthani are weak. They deserve extinction. This is natural selection in action." Captain Oh Sung-min, commanding the reconnaissance ship Silent Promise, had been using every sensor he had to study the hegemony vessels. What he found made him call Admiral Lee Sora immediately. "Admiral, these aren't just military ships. I'm detecting biological warfare equipment. Atmospheric processors that could spread the plague to entire continents in hours. They're not here to fight us. They're here to finish what the plague started." Admiral Lee Sora received the report while dealing with her own crisis. Earth's government was under enormous pressure to recall the fleet. 3 major coalition species had formally demanded that Earth abandon the Vilthani or face severe consequences. "Admiral," Ambassador Yoon Minji called from the diplomatic center, "I've been monitoring coalition communications. There's something you need to know." Yoon had been working around the clock, using her contacts throughout the coalition to understand what was really happening. What she had found was worse than anyone imagined. 3 coalition species, the Althari, Zenthak, and Korthian Republic, have been in secret talks with the hegemony for months. The deal is simple. The hegemony gets to test their bioweapons on the Vilthani without interference, and in return, they share the results with these coalition members. Admiral Lee felt sick. "They're using the Vilthani as test subjects?" It gets worse. According to intercepted communications, the Vilthani are just the beginning. The hegemony has identified 17 other species they consider evolutionary dead ends. All small, peaceful races with no military power. On the surface of Kalen, Dr. Nari had made a discovery that changed everything. Working with Vilthani healers, she had found that some of the younger Vilthani carried genetic mutations that made them resistant to the plague. It wasn't just random luck, it was evolution in action. The plague was designed using old genetic samples, she explained to the medical team. But Vilthani biology has been slowly changing over the past 50 years. The younger generation carries immunity genes that didn't exist when this weapon was made, so they can survive, asked medic Dr. Park Jae-won. Some of them, yes. But the hegemony won't let natural immunity develop. That's why they're here with biological warfare ships. They want to deploy stronger versions of the plague that can kill even the resistant ones. The moment of truth came when the hegemony commander issued his final ultimatum. "Human vessels, your time is up. Withdraw now or be destroyed. We will not warn you again." Admiral Lee Sora looked at her small fleet on the tactical display. 12 human ships against 12 hegemony vessels. But the hegemony ships were larger, more advanced and designed for war. Her ships were mostly escorts and medical vessels. "All ships, this is Admiral Lee. Prepare for combat. We will not abandon our mission." "Admiral," Captain Han Minho called from the flagship's tactical station, "the hegemony ships are charging weapons. Energy signatures are off the charts." "Then we'll have to be smarter than them," Lee replied. "Captain O, take your reconnaissance ship and get me detailed scans of their biological warfare equipment. If we can't stop them in space, maybe we can stop their plague deployment." As the 2 fleets moved toward each other, something unexpected happened. Captain O's sensors detected massive energy signatures coming from Kalen's surface. "Admiral, the Vilthani cities are powering up. I'm reading harmonic resonance patterns unlike anything in our databases." On the surface, the surviving Vilthani had gathered in the great crystal amphitheater of their capital city. Led by resonance of morning light, who had recovered enough to travel to Kalen, they began to sing. But this wasn't a song of mourning or fear. It was a song of defiance. The crystal cities began to glow, their natural harmonic properties amplified. By the Vilethani singers, energy patterns spread from city to city, creating a planet-wide network of resonating crystal. "My God," Dr. Nari whispered, watching from her laboratory. "They're turning their entire planet into a weapon." The hegemony. Commander was not impressed by light shows. "Begin the attack." The space around Kalen became a deadly maze of light and energy. Admiral Lee Sora watched her tactical display as human ships darted between waves of harmonic interference that poured from the planet's surface. The Vilethani had turned their entire world into a weapon, and the hegemony was learning why peaceful didn't mean helpless. "Admiral, hegemony flagship is firing on our position," reported Captain Han Minho from his weapons station. "Evasive maneuvers. Use the resonance corridors," Lee ordered. "Navigation. Plot us a course through Interference Zone 7. The hegemony ships were bigger and stronger, but they had never fought in conditions like this. Their sophisticated targeting computers kept losing lock as harmonic waves from Kalen scrambled their sensors. It was like trying to fight in a thunderstorm made of music. Navigation specialist Kang Borum had spent weeks studying Kalen's unique properties. The planet orbited twin pulsars that created natural electromagnetic interference. Most species would see this as a navigation hazard. Humans, who had evolved on a world with magnetic storms and solar flares, saw it as home field advantage. "Admiral, I'm reading a clear path through Sector 12. The hegemony flagship can't follow us there. Their sensor suite isn't designed for this kind of interference. Take us in," Lee said. "Signal the fleet. Attack pattern Gamma." On the surface of Kalen, Major Lim Jae-hyuk was discovering that the Vilethani had hidden depths. What Earth's intelligence had described as a pacifist species with no military capability was turning out to be something very different. Crystal's singer of deep harmonies, one of the Vilethani leaders, stood in the center of the great amphitheater. Her body glowed with internal light as she coordinated the planet's defenses. Around her, hundreds of other Vilethani added their voices to a song that could be felt in the bones. "Major!" Corporal Wandeho called out. "You need to see this!" One was standing on a platform that overlooked the city. Where before there had been empty spaces between crystal buildings, new structures were growing. Not built, grown. The Vilethani were using their harmonic abilities to shape crystal at the molecular level, creating defensive positions that sprouted from the ground, like flowers. "How are they doing that?" Lim asked. "I don't know, sir, but look at this." One pointed to a section where human engineers were working alongside Vilethani builders. "They're teaching us, showing us how to grow cover and fortifications instead of just digging holes." The cooperation between human soldiers and Vilethani civilians was something nobody had expected. Language barriers meant nothing when Vilethani could communicate through harmonic frequencies that human equipment could translate. Cultural differences disappeared when both species faced extinction together. In orbit, the battle was becoming more intense. The hegemony commander, Admiral Vex of the Iron Mandate, was getting frustrated with his inability to target the small human ships. "Deploy fighter squadrons," he ordered. "If we cannot hit them with our main guns, we will swarm them with smaller craft." Captain Oh Seung-min, aboard the reconnaissance ship Silent Promise, watched dozens of hegemony fighters pour out of the enemy capital ships. Each fighter was twice the size of a human vessel and carried enough firepower to destroy a space station. "Admiral Lee, we have a problem," he transmitted. "Fighter swarm incoming. Estimate 60-plus hostile craft." "Understood, Captain O. All ships, prepare for close combat." It should have been a massacre. Human ships were outnumbered 5-1 by fighters that were individually superior in every way. But the hegemony had made a crucial mistake. They had never learned to fight as a team. Hegemony doctrine was simple. The strong survive, the weak perish. Their fighters operated as individual hunters, each pilot trying to claim the most kills for personal glory. Human pilots, trained to work together, turned this against them. Lieutenant Colonel Park Yeon-soo, commanding a squadron of human fighters, coordinated with her pilots through tight beam communications. "Dragon Squadron, Diamond Formation. Use the planet's resonance to mask your approach vectors." The human fighters moved like a school of fish, turning and diving as one unit. When hegemony fighters tried to engage one human ship, they found themselves facing the combined firepower of an entire squadron. But the real surprise came when the Vilethani joined the fight. Crystal ships began lifting off from Kalen's surface. They looked like living artwork, graceful curves of grown crystal that seemed too delicate for space combat. The hegemony pilots laughed when they saw them approaching. They stopped laughing when the crystal ships began to sing. The Vilethani vessels didn't carry conventional weapons. Instead, they used focused harmonic frequencies that could shatter enemy hulls from the inside out. A hegemony fighter that looked undamaged would suddenly break apart as its molecular bonds were disrupted by precisely tuned sound waves. "This is impossible!" Admiral Vex snarled as he watched his fighters being destroyed by what looked like flying art pieces. "Deploy the biological warfare platforms. If we cannot win cleanly, we will finish this with plague bombs." 3 massive hegemony ships moved toward Kalen, their hulls opening to reveal weapons designed to poison an entire planet. Each bomb contained enough engineered plague to kill every living thing on a world in a matter of days. Admiral Lee Sora saw the threat immediately. "All ships, priority target those biological warfare platforms. We cannot let them deploy those weapons." "Admiral," Captain Han Minho reported from his tactical station, "our weapons can't penetrate their armor. Those platforms are designed to survive planetary bombardment." It looked hopeless. The biological warfare ships were moving into position, their crews preparing to turn Kalen into a dead world. The human fleet was too small, too weak to stop them. That's when Dr. Kim Nari made the discovery that changed everything. Working in her laboratory aboard the Defiance, she had been analyzing samples from the resistant Vilethani. What she found wasn't just natural immunity. It was evolution happening in real time. "Colonel Cho," she called over the intercom, "the plague isn't just failing to kill some Vilethani. It's making them stronger. The genetic changes that provide immunity also enhance their harmonic abilities." "What does that mean?" "It means the hegemony's weapon is backfiring. Every Vilethani who survives becomes more powerful, and I think I know how we can use that." On the surface, Dr. Nari worked with Crystal's Singer of Deep Harmonies to test her theory. The Vilethani leader had survived the plague and was now stronger than ever, her harmonic abilities amplified beyond anything her species had seen before. "Canny Bay, you extend your resonance to reach the orbital platforms?" Dr. Nari asked. I do not know. We have never tried to sing across such distances. What if you weren't alone? What if every surviving Vilethani on the planet joined their voice to yours? The idea was crazy. Planet-wide harmonic resonance on a scale never attempted before. But as the biological warfare platforms moved into position, crazy was their only option. Crystal Singer of Deep Harmonies stood in the center of the great amphitheater. Around her, thousands of Vilethani took their positions, on screens throughout the city. Images of the orbital battle played, showing human ships desperately trying to stop weapons that could end their world. "Sisters and brothers," Crystal Singer sang, her voice carrying across the planet through harmonic amplifiers built into every city. "Our friends from Earth risk everything to save us. Now we must risk everything to save ourselves and them." The song that rose from Kalen was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. Thousands of voices joined in perfect harmony, their combined power focused into a beam of pure sound that lanced up through the atmosphere toward the hegemony platforms. In space, Admiral Vex watched his biological warfare platforms prepare to fire. "Deploy plague bombs! Sterilize the planet!" The platform commanders began their firing sequence. Weapons designed to spread death across an entire world powered up, their targeting computers locked onto population centers below. Then the planet sang back. The harmonic beam hit the first platform like a hammer made of music. The ship's hull, designed to withstand energy weapons and explosions, had no defense against sound waves that attacked its molecular structure. Metal screamed as crystal formations began growing throughout the ship's corridors. "What is happening?" Admiral Vex demanded. "Sir, the platforms they're crystallizing. The hull is transforming into some kind of crystal matrix. The second platform tried to fire its weapons, but the plague bombs had been contaminated by the harmonic effect." Instead of spreading death, they released clouds of harmless crystal dust that sparkled in the starlight. Engineer Park Yan-soo, watching from her fighter cockpit, couldn't believe what she was seeing. They're turning the enemy ships into art. The third platform's crew panicked and tried to flee, but their engines had been crystallized too. The ship hung in space like a giant sculpture, beautiful and completely harmless. Admiral Vex realized his biological warfare capability had been completely neutralized. All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance. Prepare to glass the planet from orbit. But Admiral Lee Sora wasn't going to give him that chance. All ships, final assault. Target the hegemony command ship. If we can take out their leader, the rest might withdraw. The human fleet, supported now by Velthani crystal ships, charged toward the hegemony flagship. Admiral Lee Sora's message had been meant for the hegemony fleet, but the entire galaxy heard it. Within hours, every news network, every communication channel, every social media platform was playing the recording of her words. You prey on the weak because you think no one will stop you. Today you learned that some people will always stand up to bullies, no matter how big they are. The response was unlike anything in galactic history. On Earth, Director Shin Min-sok stood in the Emergency Command Center, watching reports flood in from across human space. Every shipyard, every factory, every manufacturing facility had been converted to military production. The motto had spread from world to world. Every human ship, every human gun, every human breath for Kalen. Director, his assistant reported, the cargo hauler crews are demanding military-grade weapons for their ships. They want to join the fleet at Kalen. Civilian vessels aren't designed for combat, Min-sok replied. They don't care, sir. They're welding missile pods to passenger ferries. The luxury cruise ship Golden Dawn just requested targeting computers for their entertainment deck. Min-sok pulled up the production reports. In 3 days, human space had produced more weapons than in the previous 3 years combined. People were working around the clock, sleeping in factories, eating at their workstations. Children too young to work were running supplies to their parents. The most surprising response came from an unexpected source. Captain Bae Jung-sik commanded a freight hauler called Lucky Strike. He had spent 20 years moving cargo between human colonies, staying out of politics and keeping his head down. But when he heard about Kalen, something inside him snapped. This is Captain Bae to all civilian vessels in the sector, he broadcast on open channels. I'm heading to Kalen. Any ship that wants to join me, form up at these coordinates. Within 6 hours, Bae found himself leading a convoy of over 300 civilian ships. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining vessels, research ships, even a few luxury yachts. None of them were designed for war, but their crews had spent days welding weapon pods and missile launchers to their hulls. Captain, his navigator asked, what are we going to do when we get there? We're not soldiers. We're going to stand with our people, Bae replied. That's what humans do. The image of civilian ships jury-rigged for combat spread across the galaxy faster than any government could control it. War correspondent John Suman, embedded with human forces, had been broadcasting live from Kalen throughout the battle. Her footage of Velthani children singing lullabies to wounded human soldiers was played on every news network in Coalition space, but it was her latest report that really shook the galaxy. This is Jeon Suman reporting from the crystal city of Harmony Falls, she said, standing in a medical center where humans and Velthani worked side by side. What you're seeing here challenges everything we thought we knew about interspecies cooperation. The camera showed Medic Corporal Juan Deho having his broken leg treated by a Velthani healer. The alien used harmonic frequencies to encourage bone growth, a technology they were sharing freely with their human allies. These beings are giving us their most advanced medical knowledge, John continued. Not because they owe us anything, but because that's who they are. They're sharing their culture, their science, their art. And in return, humans are sharing the one thing we do better than anyone else, the stubborn refusal to give up when someone needs help. The broadcast showed human children from the colony, ships learning to speak in harmonic frequencies while Velthani youngsters practiced using human tools. It showed engineers from both species working together to build defenses that were stronger than anything either could create alone. On Coalition, world's people began asking uncomfortable questions. If a species as primitive as humanity could work so closely with the Vilthani, why had their own governments been so quick to abandon them? The political situation became explosive when intelligence officer Kwak Suyun made a discovery that changed everything. While analyzing captured hegemony communications, she found detailed records of bribes paid to coalition officials. The vote to abandon the Vilthani hadn't been based on strategic analysis. It had been bought and paid for. General Song, she, reported to Earth's military command. "You need to see this. The hegemony has been bribing coalition senators for over a year. They wanted the Vilthani isolated so they could test their bioweapons without interference." General Song Taiwan reviewed the evidence with growing anger. Bank transfers, meeting records, even video of coalition officials receiving hegemony weapons technology in exchange for their votes. "How many officials?" he asked. 47 separate bribes across 12 species. The corruption goes all the way to the coalition's inner council. Song made a decision that would reshape galactic politics. "Prepare this evidence for broadcast on all channels. Every being in the galaxy needs to see what their governments have been doing." The evidence release triggered something unprecedented. Revolution from within the coalition itself. On world after world, civilians demanded answers their governments couldn't provide. How could they claim to represent their people while taking bribes to enable genocide? Ambassador Yoon Minji, working from a hidden base in the Kalen asteroid belt, found herself coordinating with resistance movements across dozens of worlds. People who had never questioned their governments were suddenly asking why peaceful species were being abandoned to die. "Ambassador," her assistant reported, "we're receiving requests for support from 17 different resistance groups. They want to know how to organize protests without being arrested." What are we telling them? The boss truth. That sometimes doing the right thing requires breaking unjust laws. The most dramatic response came from the coalition military itself. Ships that were supposed to be enforcing the quarantine around Kalen began experiencing mysterious technical failures. Engines broke down. Weapons malfunctioned. Communications systems developed strange glitches. Captain Park Sung-ho of the coalition destroyer, Justice's Edge, sat in his ready room, staring at repair reports he knew were fake. His engineering team had sabotaged their own ship rather than participate in genocide. "Captain," his chief engineer reported with a straight face, "the hyperdrive has suffered catastrophic failure. We'll need at least 2 weeks to effect repairs." "How unfortunate," Park replied. "I suppose we'll have to abandon our patrol mission and return to base." Similar accidents were happening throughout the coalition fleet. Military personnel were choosing conscience over orders, even knowing it might mean court-martial or worse. On Kalen itself, the transformation was remarkable. Colonel Cho Hyun-woo walked through the rebuilt sections of Harmony Falls, amazed at what cooperation could accomplish. Human engineering had helped the Vilthani build stronger crystal structures, while Vilthani harmonic technology had given human equipment capabilities they had never imagined. "Colonel," Major Lim Jae-hyuk reported, "the latest medical scans show the plague is in full retreat. Dr. Nari's treatments are working, and the Vilthani immune response is stronger than ever." But the most significant development was happening in space around the planet. Captain Oh Sung-min watched from his reconnaissance ship as vessels from across the galaxy approached Kalen. Not coalition ships sent by governments, but civilian. Vessels crewed by people who had decided their leaders were wrong. "Admiral Lee," he reported, "we're tracking over 2,000 ships approaching from 16 different species. They're broadcasting messages of support and requesting permission to join our defense fleet." Admiral Lee Sora could barely believe what she was seeing. The galaxy's governments had turned their backs on the Vilthani, but the galaxy's people were choosing differently. The culmination came when the hegemony made their final desperate move. Faced with crumbling political support and military setbacks, they deployed their ultimate weapon, a stellar disruptor designed to destabilize Kalen's sun. "Admiral," Captain Han Minho reported with barely controlled horror, "long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures. They're targeting the star itself." The weapon was exactly what its name suggested, a device that could cause a sun to collapse or explode, destroying everything in the system. It was the ultimate genocide weapon, one that left no survivors and no evidence. "Time to impact?" Lee asked. 18 hours at current trajectory." Lee found herself facing an impossible choice. She could order the evacuation of Kalen, saving some of the population but abandoning the planet. Or she could stay and fight, knowing that failure meant the death of everyone in the system. "Admiral," Dr. Kim Nari called from her laboratory, "I might have a solution, but it's never been tested, and the risks are enormous." "What do you have in mind?" "The Veilthani harmonic resonance technology. If we can coordinate it with our ship's deflector arrays, we might be able to redirect the stellar disruptor's energy." "Redirect it where?" "Back at the hegemony fleet. It was insane. Using untested technology to redirect a weapon that could destroy stars. The margin for error was 0. If they failed, the explosion would sterilize half the sector." But as Lee looked at her tactical display, showing thousands of ships that had come to stand with them, she realized that some risks were worth taking. 5 years after the Battle of Kalen, Admiral Lee Sora stood in her garden on the planet's surface, watching children play among crystal trees that grew alongside Earth flowers. The sight still amazed her. 2 species that had barely known each other now lived and worked together as if they had been friends for centuries. The transformation hadn't been easy. After the hegemony's defeat, the galaxy had gone through what historians would later call the Great Awakening. Government after government fell as their people demanded accountability for enabling genocide. The evidence of coalition corruption, broadcast across every network, had sparked revolutions on dozens of worlds. "Admiral," Captain Han Minho approached, now wearing the uniform of the newly formed Galactic Defense Alliance. "The morning briefing is ready." Lee followed him into the command center that had been built into the heart of a Veilthani crystal city. The building itself was a work of art, graceful spires that hummed with harmonic frequencies, their walls displaying tactical information in patterns of light and color. The briefing showed a galaxy in transition. The old coalition had dissolved 18 months ago, replaced by a new federation based on the Kalen Accords. The principles were simple. Every sapient species had the right to exist, regardless of their military power or economic value. Any threat to genocide would be met with immediate intervention. "Status report," Lee requested. General Song Tae-hwan, now Director of Alliance Operations, activated the main display. 12 more species have formally requested membership in the Alliance this month. The Rigel Confederation, the Centauri Free States, and surprisingly, 3 former hegemony client species. Lee nodded. The Alliance had grown from the original 3 members, Earth, the Rigel worlds, and Tau Ceti, to over 40 species in 5 years. But more importantly, it had changed how the galaxy thought about cooperation. What about the resistance movements? Still active on 14 worlds where the old governments refused to step down, but we're seeing more peaceful transitions. The people of Althar voted out their entire Senate last month. Dr. Kim Nari entered the briefing room, her hair now showing streaks of gray from years of intense work. She had become the first director of the Galactic Disease Prevention Authority, coordinating medical research across dozens of species. "Admiral, I have good news. The Veilthani immunity treatments have been successfully adapted for 17 other species. We've created universal resistance to the bioweapons the hegemony was developing. It was one of the unexpected benefits of the crisis. Dr. Nari's research into the Veilthani plague had led to breakthroughs in genetic medicine that helped everyone. Diseases that had plagued various species for millennia now had cures based on Veilthani harmonic healing combined with human genetic therapy." "Any word from the hegemony remnants?" Lee asked. Intelligence Officer Kwak Soo-hyun pulled up a tactical display showing the galaxy's outer rim. 3 splinter factions remain active, but they're mostly fighting each other now. Without their bioweapons and with most of their client species switching sides, they're no longer a significant threat. The destruction of the hegemony had been surprisingly quick once their corruption was exposed. Species that had joined them out of fear or greed abandoned them when they realized the Alliance offered protection without demanding submission. Ambassador Yoon Minji, who had spent the last 5 years helping coordinate the new government, entered with a data tablet. "Admiral, we have a situation that requires your attention." Lee looked at the report and smiled. It was exactly the kind of situation she had hoped to see more of. "The Korthian Republic is requesting Alliance protection for a refugee species called the Nathani. Their homeworld was destroyed by a natural disaster and the survivors need a new planet to settle. What's the problem? No problem. 15 Alliance members have volunteered to share territory with the refugees. We need to coordinate the offers so everyone gets what they need. It was a far cry from 5 years ago when the Coalition had been willing to let the Valthani die rather than spend resources on a species that offered no economic benefit. Now the default response to crisis was, how can we help, rather than, how does this benefit us? Colonel Cho Hyun-woo, now commanding the Alliance Rapid Response Force, brought up the next agenda item. Admiral, we have another request for intervention. The mining guild on Helix 7 is using slave labor from a pre-contact species. The locals have requested Alliance assistance. Approved, Lee said immediately. Take 2 squadrons and enforce the protection protocols. No species gets exploited on our watch. The Kalen Accords had established clear rules. Any exploitation of a less advanced species was grounds for Alliance intervention. It was a radical change from the old Coalition's policy of non-interference, but the galaxy had learned that non-interference often meant letting the strong prey on the weak. Captain Oh Sung-min, now commanding the Alliance exploration ship New Horizons, joined the briefing via hologram from deep space. Admiral, we've made contact with a new species in the Vega sector. They call themselves the Theroni, and they're requesting information about joining the Alliance. What can you tell us about them? They're about 200 years behind us technologically, but they have a fascinating culture based on cooperative mathematics. They solve problems by having entire communities work together on calculations. Lee smiled. Sounds like they'd fit right in. Arrange for a cultural exchange delegation. Let's see what we can learn from each other. It was another change from the old way of thinking. Instead of measuring new species by what they could offer, the Alliance focused on what they could share. Every species brought unique perspectives and abilities that enriched everyone. The briefing was interrupted by an alert from the surface monitoring station. Engineer Park Yeon-soo's voice came through the communicators. Admiral, we're detecting massive harmonic resonance from the children's school. I think you want to see this. Lee and her staff made their way to the observation deck overlooking the education center. What they saw there perfectly captured what the Alliance had become. Human and Vialthani children worked together on a science project, their different abilities combining to solve problems neither species could handle alone. Human children used their hands to build mechanical devices while Valthani youngsters shaped crystal components with harmonic frequencies. The result was technology that was more advanced than either species could create separately. They don't even think about it, Dr. Nari observed. To them, cooperation isn't unusual. It's just how things work. A generation was growing up that had never known a galaxy where species turned their backs on genocide. These children took it for granted that everyone helped everyone else, that differences in ability or appearance were just opportunities to learn new things. Communications. Officer Ryu Seo-hyun approached with a priority message. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's marked urgent. The message was from Admiral Chen Wei, Lee's replacement as head of Earth's Defense Forces. Her face appeared on the display with barely contained excitement. Admiral Lee, I have news that will interest you. We've just made contact with a species on the far side of the galaxy. They call themselves the Unity, and they've been watching our development with great interest. Lee felt a chill of anticipation. What kind of interest? They say they've been waiting for a species to evolve beyond the survival of the strongest mentality. They want to discuss membership in something they call the Greater Alliance. Apparently, there are thousands of species out there who have been waiting for the rest of the galaxy to grow up. The implications were staggering. All this time, while the Coalition had been focused on power and economics, there had been entire civilizations waiting for someone to prove that cooperation was possible. Later that evening, Lee walked through the crystal gardens of New Harmony, the joint human Vialthani city that had grown around the old battlefield. Resonance of morning light joined her, moving with the fluid grace that had amazed humans when they first met. Admiral Lee, the Vialthani leader said, her voice carrying notes of deep contentment, I wanted to thank you again for what your species did for mine. We just did what was right, Lee replied. Yes, but right is not always easy. Your people chose to risk everything for strangers. That choice changed more than just our fate. It changed the galaxy's understanding of what civilization means. They paused at a memorial garden where crystal sculptures grew alongside earth roses. Each sculpture represented someone who had died fighting for the principle that all sapient life had value. Human names were carved alongside Valthani harmonics, remembered together as heroes who had refused to let evil triumph through indifference. "What do you think the future holds?" Lee asked. Resonance of Morning Light's body glowed softly as she considered the question. "Growth, discovery, the joy of learning what we can accomplish when we work together instead of competing for scraps." As if to prove her point, a hybrid ship passed overhead. One of the new vessels that combined human engineering with Valthani artistry. The ship hummed with harmonic frequencies that made the crystal city respond with patterns of light, creating music that could be seen as well as heard.